He was the last person I expected to see waiting by my desk at 8:17 p.m. My boss, Mark, car keys in one hand and a takeout coffee in the other. It was raining the way it rains in old movies, like the sky had decided to tell a story of its own. I thought the ride would be 10 quiet minutes in a company sedan. I was wrong. By the time we turned onto my street, a single sentence from him made me see my life differently, and a small choice I made in that car started to repair a part of me I didn't know was cracked. Before I dive in, do me a favor. Tell me in the comments which city you're watching from. Are you in Dallas? Buffalo? Bakersfield? I love picturing your streets and porches as I tell this. The building was mostly dark, the cleaning crew ghosts in neon vests, the hum of the vending machine louder than it should have been. I'd stayed late to finish revisions no one would notice unless they went wrong. That's the secret of certain jobs. The best days are invisible. My name is Ashley, I'm 47, and I've gotten good at invisibility when it helps the work move forward. I'd already told myself I was taking the bus. My car was at the shop with a stubborn electrical issue, and I'd left my umbrella on the back of a conference chair where, no doubt, it was enjoying a climate-controlled vacation. The downpour on the windows made the lobby look smeared, like the night had been finger-painted. When I stepped out of the elevator and saw Mark leaning against the security desk, I did a little double-take. He never lingered. He was the in-before-sunrise, out-after-sunset type, the kind who learned everyone's name and no one's birthday. "Your ride situation," he said, tilting his head toward the rain. "I heard you tell facilities your car's out of commission. I'm headed your way. Let me drive you." There are a dozen different ways to say no. I tried a polite one. "That's kind, but I'll manage." He didn't push. He just held out the coffee like it was a peace offering. "Decaf, 2 creams, because I pay attention when people order exactly the same thing for 6 months. Besides, I can't, in good conscience, send you to battle those puddles. I have better tires." I smiled despite myself. He had this way of sounding like someone's responsible big brother, steady, no hard sell. Still, lines are lines and bosses are bosses. "Isn't there a policy?" I asked. "Something about, I don't know, appearances." "Yup," he said, "which is why I'm telling you 2 things. 1, the dash cam in my car will be rolling, and I'll text you its link so you can share it with whoever you like. 2, we'll keep the doors unlocked. Your call?" Consent wrapped in logistics. I appreciated that. The rain did another hard drum roll on the glass. I took the coffee, then the leap. "Okay, thank you." His car smelled like clean leather and the light lemon of those wipes people keep in glove compartments for no reason until one day it becomes essential. The wipers swung their metronome across the windshield. The streetlights stretched into long amber threads on the wet pavement, and the tires made that whispery sha that always made me feel like a kid in the back seat on the way home from somewhere safe. "Seat warmers?" he asked. "Yes, please," I said, trying not to make it sound like an answer to something larger. For the first minute, we were both quiet. He drove with the measured patience of someone who'd had a car accident a long time ago and promised himself he'd never let the world surprise him like that again. The radio murmured low, late-night baseball recap, a voice describing the arc of a ball like it mattered, because to someone it always does. "You pull the long days," he said finally, not as an accusation, just a fact laid gently on the dashboard between us. "Somebody has to collect the commas," I said. "If we launch those reports with errors, people lose faith, and once they lose faith, they stop reading even the parts we got right." He laughed, a warm, unguarded sound. "You know what I like about you, Ashley? You make the invisible visible. You care about quiet things." Quiet things have long tails, I said. They trip you later. He nodded like he might steal the line, and I was welcome to catch him in the act. Another red light, another chance for the world to be reflected back at us in 100 tiny beads on the glass. I found myself noticing small details. The way his hands rested at 10 and 2, the faint scar under his jaw he probably got as a boy, the way he checked the rear view not obsessively but faithfully, like keeping a promise to every car behind us. Do you ever go home and discover you forgot to be a person all day? I asked. I hadn't planned to ask it. The words just came, slippery and honest. You did good work, but you didn't speak to your own life. All the time, he said. I usually realize it when I open the fridge and stare at a bag of baby carrots like they're going to share their wisdom. The carrots never speak. Rude, I said, and we both laughed. At the next intersection, floodlights bounced off a construction site, and the rain turned to silver needles. He took a longer route to avoid a flooded underpass, apologizing like it was his fault. The city engineers never met a storm they respected. We passed a diner that still had its neon OPN humming. I thought of how many coffee cups had been warmed there for the price of telling the waitress your name. You have family nearby? He asked. My son's in his first year upstate, I said. And I've got a small apartment with a stubborn window. Separation finalized last winter. We were married a long time, which means separating was like untangling a necklace you can't see clearly anymore. How about you? My sister's in Ohio. Dad passed 5 years ago, and Mom's in a place with good chairs and better nurses. I visit, and we watch old westerns. She flirts with the actors as if they can hear her. That sounds sweet, I said, feeling a door open between us to a room with soft light. She earned it, he said. 54 years of teaching 5th graders fractions and kindness. She calls me Mark Anthony when she's in a generous mood, and Mr. Late for dinner when she's not. We hit that stretch of road where the asphalt hum aligns with your heartbeat. The rain eased, and the city took a breath. The conversation did that too. Not a pause, exactly, more like a shift in key. I worry, I said, surprising myself again. Not about being alone so much. I worry I'll get so good at not needing anyone that one day I'll forget how to accept help without keeping score. He glanced over, quick but steady. Then take this ride as practice, he said. No tabs, no ledger. Deal, I said, and meant it. We rolled by a park where the swings creaked in the wind, empty as a question. He told me about his first job detailing cars at a dealership where the boss taught him to roll microfiber cloths instead of folding them because the edges scratch. I told him about the summer I learned to read a room from the back row, fixing slides minutes before a client walked in, knowing which executives were allergic to serif fonts. The small things, the long tails. Somewhere around Midtown we got caught at a long light, one of those misbehaving intersections that never learn to hurry. A man in a poncho darted between cars selling newspapers and hope. Mark rolled down his window and bought one, then tucked a 5 under the plastic wrap stack and told the guy to keep dry. It was so casual I'm not sure he remembered doing it 2 minutes later. But I did. Little ledger entries like that write themselves into you. Can I ask you something borderline risky? I said when we turned onto a tree-lined street whose leaves shone like varnished pennies. I'll give you a borderline honest answer, he said. Do you ever think about, I guess about whether this is it? You get to a certain age and the shape of your life looks set. Career, schedule, the restaurants that know how you like your eggs. Do you ever feel like changing one piece would make the whole thing collapse like a Jenga tower? All the time, he said, and his voice softened. But lately I've been wondering if maybe the tower wants to be something else. A bridge, maybe. Something that carries weight in a different direction. We fell into another quiet, but a companionable one. There's a silence you have to fight and a silence that holds you up. This was the second kind. My street came up faster than I wanted it to, the way good music makes a drive feel shorter. He pulled to the curb at the hydrant and put the car in park, but left the engine running. The porch light I'd set on a timer threw a square of gold across the wet steps. For a second, I pictured myself from the outside. A woman with rain in her hair, holding a cooling coffee, sitting in a warm car with a man who'd learned to drive gently. It felt like the photograph you keep in a drawer for years, and then one day you're brave enough to frame it. This was more than a ride, I said quietly. Thank you. You did the brave thing, he said. You let someone keep you company. That's rarer than people think. I reached for the door handle, then hesitated. This is the part where, in other stories, something unprofessional happens. I need you to hear me clearly. It didn't. The unexpected thing was smaller, and if I'm honest, larger. I have something that belongs to you, he said, leaning back to pop open the glove compartment. He pulled out a thin white envelope, the kind you buy in a 50-pack. My name was on the front, written in my own handwriting. My stomach did a little elevator drop. How? You left it on the copier 3 weeks ago, he said. I picked it up because I saw your name, and then I realized it wasn't addressed to anyone. I didn't read it. I'm not a saint, but I try to act like one 3 times a week. I meant to return it, and then the days got loud. I remembered the envelope all at once. A letter I'd started to myself after a rough meeting, a list of things I wanted to remember, not to send. The idea had embarrassed me the next morning, and I'd convinced myself I'd tossed it. The fact that it existed, quiet, intact, felt like seeing a lighthouse I didn't know was still lit. Why didn't you just put it on my chair? I asked. Because the day I picked it up I also made another decision, he said, and then he stopped, choosing his next words like careful cargo. I filed paperwork that changes what I am to you. It goes into effect at the end of the week. I wanted to tell you in person. The envelope felt connected. The rain had softened to a mist, a gentle applause. I could hear my upstairs neighbor's TV through an open window, an old Sinatra song, I think something about 2:45. For a strange second I had the sense that time had stretched, giving me a little more room to consider the shape of my life. He held the envelope out to me. I didn't take it yet. We were at that moment on the threshold of one thing and another, and I wanted to stand there long enough to understand it. My hands were warm from the seat heater. My heart was steady. I thought of all the times I'd rushed through endings and beginnings like they were the same thing. What decision? I asked, not moving, breath quiet so the answer would have a place to land. In a minute, he said, and there was no power in it, just care. If you want to know. I looked at him, then at my name scrawled in my own slanted capitals on the paper, and felt a surprising wave of relief. Not the dramatic kind you see in movies, no fireworks, no strings, but the kind where the air in your lungs finally has room. I reached for the envelope. My fingers touched his for an instant, and we both took it as the simple human contact it was, nothing more, nothing less, respectful as a handshake at a church door. Okay, I said, tell me. And that's where the ride ended and something else began, right there at the curb, the porch light glowing, the rain deciding whether it wanted to leave us alone. When I stepped out of Mark's car that night, envelope clutched in my hand, the rain had slowed to a mist that clung to my hair like a secret. I thought that was the end of the story. A kind gesture, a ride home, a surprise return of something I thought I'd lost. But the truth was, the ride wasn't the end at all. It was the start of something I didn't see coming, and it carried me into places I hadn't dared to imagine. Inside my apartment, I placed the envelope on the counter, almost afraid to touch it again. The refrigerator hummed in the background, steady and indifferent, as I stood staring at my own name written in my own handwriting. A strange mirror. For a long time, I busied myself with little things, putting the kettle on, folding the dish towel, checking my son's framed photo by the window. But every glance circled back to that envelope. When I finally tore it open, the words leaped at me. Jagged handwriting in places, tender in others. It felt like reading the diary of a stranger who happened to share my skin. I had written about the loneliness I carried like a second coat. I had written about wanting to be seen again, not for the work I did, but for the person I was. And I had written a line I barely remembered. I don't want to vanish quietly. I want to matter, even if no one expects it. I folded the paper back into its envelope and pressed it to my chest. Tears didn't come, at least not then. Instead, there was a curious steadiness, like I had finally spoken aloud the things I had buried. The next morning, I expected to feel embarrassed seeing Mark at the office. Instead, when I walked past his office door, I noticed something different. The door was half open, not shut the way it usually was. His desk was organized but oddly bare, fewer files, a missing stack of reports. I wondered again about the paperwork he had mentioned. By the time the afternoon meeting rolled around, I had convinced myself that maybe he was leaving altogether. The idea unsettled me more than I wanted to admit. But when he entered the conference room, he looked calm, purposeful. After the usual updates were given, he cleared his throat and said, "I want to share some news. Effective Friday, I'll be stepping into a new advisory role. I'll still be around, but Ashley will be taking on more responsibility for our department's day-to-day." For a moment, the air left my lungs. The room erupted in polite applause. Faces turned toward me, some smiling, some curious, all expecting. My cheeks flushed hot. I wanted to shrink back, to disappear under the table. But then I remembered my own words from the letter. I don't want to vanish quietly. Later, after the meeting ended and the others left, Mark approached. "I didn't want you blindsided," he said. "You're ready, even if you don't believe it yet. I'll be here, but this is your time to stand at the front." I wanted to argue, to insist I wasn't ready, but the words stuck in my throat. Instead, I just nodded, feeling both terrified and strangely alive. The following week blurred into late nights, stacks of reports, and constant problem-solving. I felt as though I had been dropped into deeper water, but somehow I was swimming. Mark checked in at the right moments, never hovering. Sometimes he'd leave a cup of coffee on my desk without a word. Other times he'd stop by in the evening just to ask, "How are you holding up?" Always respectful, always steady. One evening, after most people had gone, I caught myself staring out at the city lights reflected in the glass windows. My phone buzzed. A text. "Outside if you want a lift. No pressure." I hesitated only a moment before replying, "Yes, please." Sliding into the passenger seat felt less strange this time. More familiar, even safe. The rain was gentler, tapping against the roof like a quiet drummer. For several minutes, neither of us spoke. It wasn't uncomfortable. It was the kind of silence that feels shared, like sitting beside someone on a porch watching fireflies. Finally, I said, "I read the letter." His eyes flicked toward me, then back to the road. "And I think I was writing to the version of myself I was afraid I'd never become," I said softly. the one who says yes to help, the one who takes up space without apologizing. You already are her, he said. You just needed to believe it. The words landed gently but powerfully, like stones dropped into water, rippling outward. We drove past the diner with its neon sign glowing against the rain, past the park where the swings creaked in the wind. Mark told me about his mother again, about how she still teased him when he visited. I shared stories about my son, about the pride and worry that twisted together inside me every time I got a text from him. Our words wove together into something that felt like trust. When we reached my building, I didn't reach for the door right away. I sat there, listening to the soft hiss of the wipers. Do you know what scares me the most? I asked. What? That I'll get so used to carrying everything on my own that when